This comes at a time when I began my studies as a curiosity. I came in as completely thinking as interesting data of mythology of humanity, a part of it that was really fascinating. But you notice I've mentioned like some small scientific facts and some studies that have been done that have attempted science. Essentially, this was the event that turned the corner where I actually wanted to study this is what is this? Because for me, I'm convinced that this is something that people experience. So we'd just come back from Japan. I was working at a temp job that was only supposed to last like 2 weeks, and I'm lasting a year.
Mm.
We started with 16 people and winnowed it down to like two of us. And the other guy was an ex-journalist for the Houston Chronicle, which was fascinating. He had these amazing stories. He'd fallen terrible times, but he had these amazing stories. The one that caught me was from the area where I live. We have a haunted stretch of road that has been talked about and had stories going on about it for like 100 years. I'm not even kidding you. And he was telling me that he had a friend that was a park ranger that was out there, and he was out smoking a doobie one night and just kind of chilling, looking out at the beautiful moonlight over a cornfield that was north of it. And as he was sitting there, he saw something in the cornfield, and it was these black hooded figures walking in a procession through the cornfield. And he was like, huh, to like a barn. Now that was that. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And he's like, it was just creepy and weird. I'm like, did he look into investigate? He's like, no, he went home because he was going to look into that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I looked into the myths and everything like that, and it was kind of creepy because this stretch of road. So the story goes with it is that there are 5 bridges going across, and it's this creepy little river that snakes across it like 5 times. And the classic story is you go across 5 bridges and you turn around. There's only 4 coming back,
Wait,
but
wait,
that's
wait.
because
Were these hooded figures? Were they saying "EA
yeah,
Domine"?
that's exactly what
You
came to my head.
you beat me to that one, man.
But it's funny because the 5 bridge thing is kind of a hilarious joke if you think about it. Because most people they go, "Oh my God, there were only 4 bridges coming back." That's because you turn
Like,
around and one of them don't count it, right?
let's cross these 5 bridges. 4 bridges. Four.
5 is right out. So, anyways, so I kind of looked into this, and there's this tiny, tiny, dinky little graveyard at the end of what is called Spook Road. Now, if you go down there at night, not anymore. They cut down all these trees, but it used to have this arcade of these crazy trees that would cover the road, and it was absolutely like during the day it was beautiful. At night, it was creepy as all get out because it was hills and it was up and down. It was like literally kind of like straight out of Ichabod Crane.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I just was gonna say, sound like.
It is terrible, terribly creepy. Anyways, so we're gonna fast forward. I was now working on my master's. I had talked about wanting to do it, and I'd found a way to do it, and I was really happy about it. And I was studying it, and at this point, you have to understand, I'm in my early to mid 20s. I was super excited because I was actually studying as a guy who was going to become a priest. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually studying Satanism legitimately in any field of study because I was comparing it to the
Great.
inoculum, right? It was great. I was talking about it. Now, what's funny is that as I was talking and joking about it, like, it's just weird to be able to be doing this. This kid who was like a stoner and just was spaced out all the time suddenly like came to life and was like, "What do you know about Satanists?" And I go, "Well, from what I've read, they're about as actually dangerous as a fart in a crowded elevator. Other than that, not really anything." And he seemed put out, and I'm like, "Okay, that's weird." So I waited it, and the next day it was kind of
He's
bothering
like
me. Like,
he's like I'm a card carrying member of the Church of
yes,
Anton LaVey.
right. Well, and
Anton
so
LaVey.
like, what were you gonna tell me? Because you seemed put out, and I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Okay.
And he's like, okay, well, and then he's like, I'm not gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna wait until after work, and then we'll talk about it. I'm like, okay, whatever. So then I sit down, and he regales me with all these bizarre stories of a cult supposedly active in my area, and that he was like, there was this lady who was like a surrogate mother to him that was like he thought well of that used to be a member of this group, and that he had gone out to all these areas where they were supposed to practice and had all sorts of experiences, including coming back one time and like looking in the mirror and not seeing himself. Which I'm like, okay, were you on anything or anything like that? But here's the thing: as he was telling me all these stories, he got to one where he's like, "Well, supposedly,
Sorry, he saw a face that wasn't his own, or he saw
right?
nothing.
He saw a face that was not his own,
Wow.
That's even
yeah,
creepier.
right? But like I said, he was a stoner, okay? And if like because and people say, "Well,
So
weed doesn't."
disregard everything he said.
Kind of, and that's the
Right,
thing.
right,
But
right.
this is what got it for me. So then, as he was telling me this thing, like supposedly they actually have rituals where they would conceive children and sacrifice them. Now, I just had my son at this point, and for some reason, I had like this all of a sudden like snapped me out of my complete like this is bull crap and completely skeptical trance that I was listening to him, and then I had this bizarre sensation that I was being keenly observed. You know, like you're looking like someone staring at you in the back of your head, and my gut started twisting, and I was like, I'm actually experiencing real true fear, and I'm starting to get the shakes in my hands. I'm like, this is bizarre because there's nothing dangerous going on here. I'm
Mm.
not. It was weird. I had true fear like boiling through my guts, like someone was watching us as we were talking. And so, and as he told me the story about kids being sacrificed, I was losing sleep over because like I mean I was all I could think about is who would do that, and it was my own kid. And with just having a kid, it was just like tormenting me.
Yeah.
So I went to my deeply analytical and very cold brother, who's the psychologist, like your dad, to get some grounding, right?
Mm.
To try and find, like, say, get me back on track because I'm kind of like I'm losing sleep over this sort of thing. It's kind of wigging me out, and I'm losing my rationality over it. And I tell him some of the stories that this guy had told me about how he like met people out there in the woods where suddenly everything they said sounded like a good idea, and you felt compelled to do what they were telling you to do,
Yeah.
and that he had gone out there across Spook Road and come back, and like apparently like the entire road had changed and there were houses there that weren't supposed to be there and things like that. And as I was telling them these stories, I then got to the thing where it's like, oh, there was a cult and these kids they were supposedly sacrificing children. I'm like, is this, you don't know anything? I'm like, help me out here, help me bring me some like sanity, okay? And then he stopped and then started finishing the stories he told me in even greater detail. And I was like, where are you getting this from? He goes, I've currently got a client who says that he's a victim of the exact same groups you're talking about. I went, he goes, I've been looking at this. He goes, and this is the funny
Mm.
thing. He goes, have you heard of the Grimorium Verum? And at that point, I had not heard anything. He's like, apparently they use this as a reference text for all their rituals. I'm like, well, that's unsettling that I'm studying this legitimately and you're not, and you know more about this than I do. But after that, we had confirmed those facts between ourselves, and I told him about the concept of a barn, what they were using for their rituals. And he's like, I don't know anything about that. Tell me more about it. And like how it was like they use abandoned barns for their rituals and things like that. And we had confirmed so many facts between each other. It started as kind of like, ooh, this is creepy and spooky. It didn't turn into this sucks. And we didn't talk for like a month after that. We both
Wow.
we both creeped each other out. But the one thing they told me that was creepy is that the other counselors were warning him, he told me, to watch for the symptoms of this client that he had, because apparently this is not the first time, and that they had members of this group that would fake symptoms to try and figure out how much they knew. I'm not kidding you. And he's like, all right, I'm done with this. And he left that entire practice and went to the hospital proper.
Fake symptoms in order to figure out how much who knew.
The counselors.
Oh, why?
Because apparently they were the story that the other counselor told them, that the members of this group they thought actually exists wanted to know what was known about them.
Oh, so basically they're trying to see if they were still flying under the radar, so to speak.
Right.
Wow.
So
That's
he
diabolical.
right, diabolical. He had
It's totally
quit.
diabolical in the more colloquial sense.
Right? He had quit that doing that, and he had nothing more to do with it. We never talked about it again. I did the far more rational thing, decided to go out to where they were doing that stuff and see it for myself. So I told that kid,
Is that
all right,
that's the more rational?
Yeah, yeah.
And I go to my wife, I'm like, I got to do this. I'm sorry, I'm being an absolute idiot, but this is something I just have to confirm. She's like, I get it, but if you get hurt, I swear to God, I'll kill you. I'm like, got it. If I get hurt, I die. Good to know.
So win-win situation for everybody.
So you put on your robe.
I told the kid to come out with me. I'm like, all right, but here's the thing. You're creepy, And you're telling me this stuff, and it's like, and I'm kind of getting paranoid at this point. So we're bringing like a third impartial party, one of our other coworkers, with us, just to like make sure you don't try and kill me. Okay, okay. So then we decided to go out to one of the barns where they supposedly practice. Now the funny thing is, like, now we got to get back before 6 o'clock because then bad things happen. Like, do not do this dramatic bullcrap with me, kid. Just don't screw with me. Let's go see the places. Just
Yeah.
keep it to the brass tacks, please. So we go to this barn, and sure enough, the barn is filled with the same symbols that we just showed in the Grimorium Verum, actually. And so what that tells me is it's not necessarily a place of practice, but this is a well-known bit of like urban legend, right? That's what that says to me. I'm not going to be like, oh, this is the place. No, no. This means that people come here and they know that this is a story because it's not an unknown thing. It's very popular around here, and everyone kind of knows that kind of
So,
aspect of things.
so this is a retcon. People go in there and they make the sigils on the walls in order to give credence to a story that's been going on for
Right.
from this
Exactly.
place for a long
That's
time.
what I get from it. That's how
Yeah.
how I take it. Then he shows me all this twine that was hanging down, and it was like, oh, he's like, this twine is the perfect length to like tie someone up with, and to like demonstrate. I'm like, dude, that's reaching. I mean, you can make these interesting things, and it is bizarre how the twine's like laying around, but that doesn't really. You're making too many assumptions of a thing.
Mhm.
So then we go upstairs, and then we see squatter stuff all over in the loft in this barn, and it was like, you know, there were sleeping bags, there were clothes laying around. I'm like, well, this is probably a bad place to be, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
here's the creepy part. This is the part that I actually thought was fascinating. As I walked around this sleeping bag that looked, rather newly used, like someone had been in it just recently, I walked around it and immediately fell through.
What made you think that? No, just joking.
And I caught myself on the rafters and managed to lift myself out. So the thing is, I'm not in poor shape. I've been a rock climber for a long time and everything like that. And it wasn't a big deal. That didn't even unnerve me. I was like, okay, said, good thing I didn't get hurt. Otherwise, my wife would kill me.
Yeah.
But I lift myself up and I'm like, this is bizarre. How could they be sleeping on this if you can fall right through when you're just walking on it? So
Oh, I see. Yeah.
we pulled them back. Now, this is an old, ramshackle, rundown barn. Half of the loft had been recently remade. Which I thought, and I said, everything else you've told me is bullcrap. This is weird. No one's going to be using this. But I know this is an acreage, but there's no farmland out here, and they're not planning on turning it into a farm. What is going on? I'm like, why would you remodel only half of this? And it looked like it was in progress, and then have
Yeah.
squatter stuff over it. I'm like, it was brand spanking new, good new wood and everything like that. Now I'm going to fast forward just mark down that I went to this barn and we were examining it, okay, in your heads, because this is relevant way later. So I'm like, all right, cool, that was creepy. That one thing was creepy, I guess, but let's keep going. So he's like, well, we're going to do Spook Road next. I'm like, that's cool. We're going to do that before dark because I'm sufficiently wigged out at this point. We're not going to go there at night. So we drive down Spook Road. It's pretty uneventful. We stop and get out, and I look at one of the bridges, and I was looking at an old apiary where the first original bridge used to be on that. And all of a sudden, this cop car, a sheriff car, comes rolling by on this completely dead road. There's nothing going on this road. I'm like, why is the sheriff out here? Well, the third kid that we decided to bring along decided to show his true value by then pretending to hide behind a tree, which immediately got the sirens, and he's turned around. I'm like, why did you do that? And he's like, what do you guys? Like, we're out for a hike. He's like, well,
dumbass, we're not doing anything.
like, why did your friend try and hide behind a tree? And I literally said, because he's a dumbass and thought it would be funny to hide from a cop because that's a cool thing to do. He's like, all right, well, don't cause any trouble. I don't want to hear any stories of what you guys are doing down here. I'm like, okay, people go around here for hikes all the time. I don't know what you're worried about. So he gets in the car and drives off. I'm like, that was weird. And I said, why is he out here? There's no one out here. It's like an empty road, right? So we continue on. We go to the cemetery. Now, this is the thing. I'd fallen through a loft and been fine. But when we walk up to this dinky, crappy cemetery that's poorly taken care of, all of a sudden my guts twist. And he goes, well, supposedly they've linked a demon to this place to ward off something. I said, what do you mean? He's like, I'll show you. And then my guts twisted again. I'm like, I don't like this. And I looked at the third guy. Third guy, he's made a big show about not believing in anything, is a big atheist and everything like that. He's wigging out too. I'm like, you going to come? And he's like, yeah, I'm coming. So we go in there and we walk in. Now, we looked this up later on Google Maps, and it was because in the north western corner of this tiny, crappy cemetery. There had been a tree for a while, but then it was cut down a couple years prior to when we got there, but still laid like in a bracken there. I'm like, trees don't take a lot of money to haul away, and this is like, property owned, like it's a cemetery. Why hasn't this been hauled away? How long is this going to take? So we walk up to this tree and we see, bizarrely, there's a full can of lighter fluid next to it. Like maybe some punk was trying to plant something. It was just a bizarre thing to find. But then he walks in and goes, supposedly, this is where they bury the kids. And then like guts lurched again. I'm like, this is bullcrap, but still I'm feeling this tangible sense of terror. Now, this is the part that's really creepy to me. The kid moved forward and literally walked into the tree, like down into it, and completely bodily vanished. Like there were stairs. And for the life of me, I'm like, what is down there? I couldn't bring my feet to move. And I look at the kids like, can you go look and see what he's showing? He's like, I'm not going down there.
Yeah.
Like, I can't go down there either. I'm like, I cannot, I'm literally terrified. I cannot go forward. He's like, I'm not going down there. So you make a big show about not ever like believing in anything. You think this is all crap. Go down there. He's like, I'm not going down there. I'm like, all right, fine. I'm not going down there
So
either.
you said that the stoner kid went down there?
The stoner kid went down. I'm like, I don't want to get knifed in the back or see whatever's down there, right?
Yeah.
Because I go, and here's the thing, I go, where are you? And it sounds like it's far away. He goes, I'm down here. Come on down. I'm like, not going down there. So then we hear him do some grunting. He's coming back up from this tree that's been cut down. It looks like someone's dug underneath it. And it was creepy. I'm like, I'm done with this place. I'm feeling sick to my stomach. I think I've had enough. We should probably get out of here. And he's like, well, he goes, there's one last place. We should go to the Gitchimanto Reserve south of here, because that's always kind of a creepy place where I've always seen stuff. I'm like, fine, we'll go to this one last place.
Right.
This is where it gets creepy again. So we go down the Gitchimanto Reserve, and it is beautiful, right? He's like, well, I just saw a shadow figure behind us. I'm like, dude, do not mess with me. I said this before. I don't want to hear this sort of crap. Just show me the thing you want to show me, but don't do this. I'm not easily rattled like that. So then as we're walking by, we stand above this perfectly still pond. Now, it's about this time of year. So it was getting cold. And I had this Harley-Davidson biker jacket on. It was not enough at this point. I could see my breath, and we're getting kind of cold. And like, so we're standing out looking over as the sun's going down, and this perfectly still pond, even though the wind's blowing. Like, that's kind of neat. And all of a sudden I look over like, do you see people with flashlights over there? Aren't we the only ones in this park? Because no one's out here when it's cold. He's like, yeah. He goes, and I kind of laughed. I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if they were looking for us? And right then, the flashlights, and this is a long distance away, whipped towards us and like froze there for a second, then start dancing. Like, I'm like, I think they're running. I said, I think they're running towards us. And look at the guys like,
I would have just beat it. I would have just beat it right out.
But that's the reality of the thing, because when it's actually happening, like, no one's going to be running after us in the trees. And like, can we be running? And like, the third guy brought, I think we should be running. So we all run, and we are actually being chased by people with flashlights. Now we come up to our car, and there's this big tan long truck with binoculars on the dash. No one else is at this entire reserve. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And I'm freaked out, and I'm like, let's just get the hell out of here. So we get out of there. I tell my wife everything that happened. I'm kind of like wigged out a bit. And she's like, well, at least you didn't break your leg when you fell through the damn barn. I told you not to get her. I'm like, thank you for that. Anyway, so now
and you didn't get killed.
Here's the creepy thing, though. The other thing that gets me is that a couple nights later, I was having a dream. And it was a vivid dream, like where it felt extraordinarily real. In this dream, I was investigating a haunted hotel with my wife. Now, for some reason, the bathroom was out in the hallway, but it doesn't matter. Because the minute I stepped out in the hallway in the dream, it's like the dream froze. Now, you guys are old enough to remember like playing like Quake when you put no clip on and you could go walking through the walls. Did you guys ever play like old first-person shooters?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. And I was more of an RPG kind of.
Me too. Yeah. So anyways, it looked like someone was literally walking through the floor with just the top half of their head coming up through the floor, and they were just walking towards me. I'm like, well, this is bizarre. And it felt like it was in the dream. I knew the dream feels like it has stopped.
Yeah.
And it stopped right at my feet and locked eyes with me. And I woke up with a start, like literally jackknife awake, and heard the most cliched bullshit you've ever heard in your life echo like it was like being screamed in my skull. We are watching you. And I just about vomited. So after that, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to go out there ever again.
The moral of the story, never trust a stoner kid.
The story's not over. So I went to a whole new job. I quit that job, go to a whole new job. And later on, there was a lady who was the assistant manager there, and I overheard her talking to the manager like, "Yeah, there's lots of satanic activity in the region." I just stopped by the door and just froze, and she's like, "Yeah, there's supposedly they dream stalk you, and they will follow you in like astral projection and like watch what you're when you're talking to other people." I'm like, and I got chills
Wow.
on my back. I'm like, I'm not like. Apparently, I asked her all about it. I'm like, so apparently she worked at one of the counseling firms that was not the same one, but they had the same stories, they had the same kind of clients and everything like that, and it was like, so this is kind of like a phenomenon in this region where people would tell these stories.
I've never
The
even heard of dream stalking.
actually, there's a book about it, and this is the one that why I did research on this. It is called Dream Telepathy by, I think I brought it last time, Stanley Krippner and Montague Ullman et al., and a whole bunch of other researchers at the Maimonides Dream Lab in New York. It is about exactly that, and if I remember what I told you, that's literally what they use as the basis for the movie Inception.
Oh, right.
Hey, I've got a question. Are you like just pertaining to the dream stalking and all of these the creepy road and stuff like that? Is it? Do you think it's more the place that's like kind of a conduit, or do you think it's the people that are kind of the conduit?
So we have right next to us the Eros Data Center, and they do an inventory of geomagnetic anomalies because they need to know that even for we have the Ellsworth Air Force Base right next to us. They need to know that so that when they're landing, they don't damage their landing gear because actually gravitational anomalies can cause damage to landing gear.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a guy named Michael Persinger, who is the head of behavioral neuroscience at the Laurentian, who did research on what causes people to receive visions. And he called this concept tectonic strain theory. He essentially theorized that certain compositions of minerals within the Earth project a proper frequency of geomagnetic radiation to stimulate your pineal gland and prime your hallucinatory senses, like what you would have when you were dreaming.
Yeah.
Huh.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
an anomaly right in that region.
Oh, right. Right. So what
I
region
mean,
are we talking about again? What's this
The barn, I was
no,
going to
no,
tell you.
yeah, no, where are, I mean, not to dox you, but where are you
I've already
talking about?
talked about. I'm in South Dakota,
Oh, so
and
this is and this is locally to where you are now.
yeah,
Oh,
yep.
okay, wow.
wow.
So, anyways, that barn, by the way, that we had investigated was burnt down in an act of unsolved arson the summer after we'd gone there. So
Wow.
couldn't show anything about that. So that's kind of like, whoa,
Wow.
holy crap.
It was like a purge by fire, purge by fire, whatever you want to call it. But but that in itself is creepy too. It's kind of like a big explanation, like a big like someone either like got really mad at everybody, or it's like I'm going to end this once and for all because this is crazy.
But
Right,
that takes
right.
a leap of logic, and you're ignoring a lot of rationality when you make that statement. And I'll always weather the whole story with that. Like this is a whole bunch of coincidences, like we brought up earlier,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but linked together to make it kind of spooky. So that's why I'm saying I get the same feeling that you just put out, but I'm not going to ever state that as a fact. It's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, yeah. I have actually two quick stories that relate to that. One of which, I mean, it's not, again, the first one is not really paranormal, just kind of creepy and slightly like nefarious goings on in a cult like environment in a rural area. So this is, some of my ancestors on my mom's side have long lived around Travis County, Texas, around Austin, and around the Blanco, Texas area. So, we would go back to visit my grandma every summer for like family reunions for, get-togethers. And it's rural Texas, mostly people are just walking around in cowboy hats and cowboy boots and driving trucks, right? As you would expect. But once I was in a supermarket there with my uncle and my cousin, and we saw a guy in a full like Eastern Orthodox priest robe and a long Eastern Orthodox priest beard and an Eastern Orthodox priest hat, or monk, I should say. I'll post a photo or something of what he looked like, but it was just like very striking. And I've been around the world and I've seen, monks in airports and monks in various situations. And it does that in and of itself doesn't strike me as odd. It did in that particular region, But in and of itself, it wasn't very striking. But it's my grandma's husband, so my step grandfather, said something like, "Yeah, guy, he's a creepy guy. He has to look twice to make a shadow," which is a stupid thing to say. I don't know. I'd never heard anything like that. But basically, in my impression was like, oh, here's some Bible thumping, Bible belt Christian. So this wasn't my relative; it was my grandmother's husband after my grandfather died. So I thought, oh, this is just these people being slightly xenophobic to things they don't understand. This is a Orthodox Catholic or Greek,
so that's where you get it from.
Greek Orthodox monk, and here's this relative of mine saying like, oh, he has to look twice to make a shadow.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Can you do that? Because I said, so that's where you get it from. And it completely just, it was a joke. It was a joke. Just repeat that because I don't want, like,
I can't remember what I was saying. Oh, so
about
anyway.
your xenophobic.
Oh, right. Yeah. So anyway, so I just thought he was being slightly xenophobic or whatever. So I didn't think much of it. I was like, oh, he doesn't like this guy because he looks different, right? That was my impression. But then I would see these monks, and we drove around that area, and they lived like in this real isolated, as you do when you want to have a monastery. There's actually a Greek Orthodox monastery on a hill in the Texas Hill Country north of Blanco, Texas. Anyway, it turned out, and they were known as like they would take in runaways into the community, into the Orthodox, into the abbey.
That don't sound right.
So they would take in runaways, and the idea was they would rehabilitate these runaways. That was what they said they were doing. Anyway, so, and I heard in the news a few years later, right? I heard in the news a few years later that it was, it's called the Christ of the Hills Monastery in Blanco, Texas. Anyway, it's shut down now because the police shut it down because people were complaining, and I won't go into huge detail because I don't know all the details, but basically it got shut down because they were saying that the kids that they were taking in as runaways were being abused by the priests and stuff, by the monks.
No kidding.
Yeah, but it was so it was just kind of like this slightly occult group in the forest or whatever doing weird things to kids. That's what made me think of it. Your story.
Yeah.
That's disturbing, man. Like, Anthony's story is cool. It's just like,
I know mine's just lame. Okay, the last one I'll just say it's a little bit the most paranormal of the stories that I have was again also in Texas, again during a summer family reunion in Texas, where my grandma lived, and my cousins and I were just walking down this country road, and we saw this Gothic mansion, like straight out of like a horror movie, like this Gothic mansion at the end of the road. Looked like it had been built in like Victorian times, late 19th century. And we're like, wow, cool, creepy old house. And we walked around, we kind of explored it, looked boarded up, abandoned. And we go in the back, and there's like this old abandoned well. And it had been covered over with some boards. And, we're kids, and we're like, lifting up the boards and looking down in the well, and we're like, whoa, that's cool. But then I started getting kind of scared for some reason. I was getting kind of panicked. We explored the premises and then went back, and that night I went to sleep, and I had the craziest dream, like the most alarming and like visceral nightmare that I'd had till that time. I was probably like 11 or 12 years old. And the dream was that my younger brother, Clayton, had fallen into the well, couldn't get out, and was stuck down there and ended up drowning down there. And all my uncles were trying to get him out with ropes and stuff like that. And I woke up and I thought it was real, and I was crying. I was like, Clayton, where's Clayton? And there, it was just a dream. About 3 or 4 years later, I was back in that town, and I was talking to some people, and I was walking. I was actually playing tennis, and I said, "Oh, there's that house down out there at the end of the road." I don't know. I asked the person I was playing tennis with. I was like, I can't remember exactly the context, but that house came up in conversation, and the girl I was talking to was like, oh, you don't want to go over there in that house. That house is haunted. Like 80 years ago, some kid fell in a well in
Oh
that
shit.
well,
And his name was
and they
Clayton
boarded it
Scrivener.
up, and it's been closed ever since. No one wants to go in there. It's haunted. Like there's a weird vibe. The whole house, can't sell it. It's just been like abandoned and boarded up. I was like, when she said that, I was like, what?
But yeah, I enjoy studying paranormal stories. I've actually even considered getting together a bunch of gear and doing paranormal investigation around the area because it would be very, very fascinating to actually do the analysis of the data and really show that to people and show, like, this is what you're looking for. These are the things, and here's why it doesn't really prove anything, and just be straightforward about that.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could like kind of do like the Pepsi challenge. And by that I mean you grab people that have no idea that you're taking them to like some place where something heinous happened, right?
Mhm.
And then just kind of
A-
gauge how
And then take them to somewhere like that, and then take them to some random corner where nothing's ever happened.
Actually,
yeah,
you say that. I had a friend that would do exactly that because she was part of a paranormal investigation team, and that's how they would vet their mediums to
yeah,
see. "Okay, we're going to take you to a place. Let us know if you feel anything." They'd take them to a couple areas, and like if they said, "Oh yeah, I get something from here," like, "No, you're full of crap because there's nothing here." And then
yeah,
they
yeah,
go, then they go to the other place, and like, "What do you
Nothing,
think?"
literally nothing has ever happened here.
Right? It's just nothing's going on here. You're full of crap. And then they take them to like the one of the lesser known areas where they would just be like make you sick to your stomach. They'd know the real ones would be like, what the hell is this place?
yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
like
cool.
take them to burned out places. It's like, is this a burned down church or a Walmart? And then you got to guess or something like that, you know?
Right?
You take him to Jeffrey Dahmer's
Close your eyes.
apartment. He's like, oh, I'm feeling warm and fuzzy here in Jeffrey
Yeah,
Dahmer's
but you know what? Though?
apartment.
I mean that. But I think if you just take normal people that claim no kind of medium, no, they know nothing. You just,
That's
someone who just is the guy you work with,
The guy off the street. Right.
guy off the street, and see if they have some kind of reaction.
That's actually
You know?
more of an interesting experiment. You take just like on a random sample of, 100 nobodies, take them to some weird place, ask them what they feel.
well,
And
that's along the lines of David Hufford's research, where he wrote a book called Terror That Comes in the Night. I told you about last time.
oh,
Terror
right,
That
right.
Comes in the Night is an experience-based study where he would literally just ask the same questions to people and check off the hits, and eventually came up with this massive group of people where they were basically all telling the exact same story and all the elements. Really
Wow.
fascinating.
Wow. My dad, he was, like I told you, he was a psychologist, but he didn't have any training being a crisis counselor. I don't know how he got that job. His training,
They were hiring that day.
they were hiring that day. His
Raw.
training was in flipping Big Macs. No, his training, he did his PhD on
He took a correspondent course from the in the back of a comic book.
No, his training was doing word association analyses. He did his PhD in that.
Those have caught so much flack, but I'd be interested to hear
No, but like it was back in the late 60s, early
Sure.
70s, but it was like, basically he's more of a statistician, my dad. That's why,
Interesting.
that's why that study kind of made me think of that. But he's like, well, if I tell 100 people, if I say the word yellow, how many people are going to say mellow? That would be a rhyming word. That's in this category. How many people are going to say orange? That's a related word. Or how many people are going to say lemon? That's
Then your dad said, "Hey." Then your dad said, "Okay," and you said, "Corral."
corral.